It's all good? Okay, so first of all, I want to thank the Detroit Public Library for making this possible. A lot of people in and around the library were of a great deal of help to me. Like this gentleman here, it just helped me get them out of my one-bedroom apartment. Okay, so I have a few words here. Oh, as a matter of fact, these are some words that I'm about to say. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as I was saying, these are some words. First question is, why was I born? And why was I born on Earth? And why does it hurt sometimes when I do this? Why do so many people live in the town of Normal, Indiana? Why is the golden gizzard of my unaccountable joy still nestled in the hungry gullet of my immortal soul? I really have no freaking idea. But let's all pretend that my shiny artworks are a response to these questions. Please allow me to tell you a bit of my story. As a bit of an explanation, as a chance to parcel out blame in the form of gratitude. First of all, I'll blame my folks, because as I enter my second childhood, I announce proudly that I'm finally over my first. My dear dad, who sadly passed away before I learned to walk, was, as the family pictures show, very kind and often sugar sharp, right down to his Clark Gable mustache, which demonstrated style, taste, and visual acuity. Additionally, my mother, who grew up poor in Bluffton, Georgia, born in 1913, who could only read and write her name. She did days' work as a housekeeper or maid. She couldn't even read the road signs, so she navigated her way to the suburbs to her job every day by landmarks, a photographic or eidetic memory, visual acuity. I must mention also the West Side Detroit house where I grew up, 4268 Webb, to check your programs. And one thing I dug was there was these bits of painted over plaster on the walls and ceilings that no one ever noticed. I love them. They looked like continents to me. I grew up staring at imaginary landscapes on the wall. They must have thought I was nuts. And very happily, I was. I also want to blame my mentor, the late, great Edmund Morey, who in 1968, the year I met him, was an abstract artist who was a member of the 1960s and 70s collective Common Ground of the Arts in what was then called the Cass Corridor. He looked like a barrel-chested Care Bear hippie. My best friend, though he was like, I don't know, 20, 30 years older. He was the art director of my neighborhood boys club, and Ed lived in a loft right around the corner from where I live now, in what is now called Midtown. He was the first dedicated lifer artist I ever knew. I didn't even know that people like that existed outside of movies, to tell you the truth. We were, in my family and in my neighborhood, we were blue-collar working folks, fresh from the Great Migration North. Very Detroit. I watched him make art. I listened while he talked to his artist friends, who were all grown-ups. The very first well-crafted collage I ever saw was one he made to promote his one-man show at the Willis Gallery, which is also in cast and long gone. I was 14 when I helped him install it. In high school, as I said earlier, he really was my best friend. I don't think he knew it, though. He got me into Aquinas College in Grand Rapids, and later helped me move to Philadelphia and then New York. Thanks, Ed. I got to New York in the late 70s, skyscrapers and everything. I was thrilled, I was terrified. I was a musician then, and everyone I knew was an aspiring something, artist, dancer, director, actor, who worked as waiters or whatever during the day. I landed there at the beginning of the graffiti art movement of Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring, during the first days of hip-hop. I saw them around, but I was barely paying attention, to tell you the truth. I came to New York to write songs and to perform them and to find musicians who wanted to play my rock songs, my jazz songs. And I blame Jimi Hendrix. And I especially blame Billie Holiday. This thing is no longer on. Hang on. It doesn't matter, I don't need, okay, can you hear that? Okay, with the help of my artist friends, I eventually got a day gig as a picture framer in Soho. A very shiny group of folks like Basquiat dropped by daily, and I hardly even noticed, because all I ever thought about was music. And later on, as an art handler for an extremely cool small company whose client list included many of the major galleries and artists and buyers, and once again, I didn't even really notice, though it was my a deep dish course in ground level art history. Art making, I started making art in the dizzying fringes of my showbiz aspirations. I made collage pieces to promote my gigs, my bands, at the bitter end, at the bottom line, at the Nuyorican Poetry Cafe, at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, and a bunch of clubs and bars and dumps I no longer even remember. These were analog days, my children, long before email. I'd cut and paste something eye-catching, then I'd take the subway into town, head to the 24-hour Kinko's on St. Mark's Place, and order copies on cardstock in the middle of the night. The trick was to tape and glue pieces together and then take them into town and post them, to glue and paste them on light posts and walls all over Soho and the Village without getting caught by the police. These were the snail mail days. We'd have a notebook at every gig in which our fans would write their addresses. I'd make the postcards. This would have me at the post office near Times Square, licking stamps and standing in long lines to mail them off. My point here is practice, accidental mastery. I didn't want to be a visual artist. I was the music world's latest undiscovered sensation, or so I thought. I never noticed that sometimes folks like my posters better than they like my singing. I did a lot of gigs, a lot of promos, which took more and more time to complete because I really started to enjoy the process. I never noticed that I was getting pretty good. I was an art handler then, concentrating mostly on not dropping the Picasso. That was what I was being paid. That's how I kept a roof over my head. When my coworkers were going to be in a group show in Brooklyn, I decided to enter. The piece, which was very cool, it was on a lattice work of black and white eyeballs. And on top of that was the jacket of an ex-slave with a lion's head and some sort of legs I fashioned out. I can't even remember. And the funny thing is that piece was stolen from the exhibit, which I still take as a compliment. Working my day gig, working my night gig, on and on and on, struggling to keep an apartment, actually. Basic Life 101. From 1978 to 2000, this went on. I had no idea how much time was flying until bam, my twin brother gets cancer. And bam, my mother is suddenly an old woman who definitely and deservedly needed my help. So it was time to come back home to Detroit, where I hadn't really lived since 1974. This is the year 2000. So it was time to come home to a rather ravaged West Side. I had no idea where I was. I hadn't seen anything in forever. My mind officially was blown. First with the deaths of my family, with the death of my New York ambitions. My heart was officially broken. Brother from another planet time. PTSD time. Back to where, rightly or wrongly, I believe I needed to hide my violin case in the back of my head. Those were hard times, at least in my neighborhood for a black nerd. I had to hide my violin case in the back of my head. But strangely enough, oh, wacky universe, Detroit is where I finally got my wings. So, thank you. When I got here in 2000, I didn't need to work right away. I'd actually had some savings. Remember savings? But I didn't really know where I was. I'd never driven a car. So I'd take the Dexter bus and do what I always did. I started haunting bookstores, libraries, and art galleries. And at John King Books, I started buying things to read, magazines and National Geographic and Life, etc., old ebonies and sepia. And after reading and rereading them, I eventually started cutting them up. There was nothing else to do with them. I soon had a box of heads and torsos that I started to move around, making the puzzles inside a puzzle inside a puzzle, in the very room where, as a kid, I'd take plyboard and crayons and popsicle sticks and would make a model baseball stadium. The best part of which was deciding how far they had to hit to get a home run, so I'd mark little crayons 350 feet, 400 feet to dead center field, that sort of thing. It was also where, decades before, I disassembled the Life magazine cover of Batman and carefully glued it to my bedroom wall with Elmer's glue without even asking my mother first. Yeah, I got a little trouble for that. But yeah, so I blame Batman. The psychedelic colors and the way the camera had this weird tilt during the action scenes. If you watch the reruns, all the scenes are tilted. And I love that. I love that. It went to my system like, I don't know, the crack they serve in heaven. You know, it hit me that deeply. And then when I'd run out of poster board to make collages, I took to nicking campaign posters from people's lawns. True story. I know it wasn't really cool to do, but in the words of Bob Marley, I was fighting for survival. True. Mental survival, soul survival. I couldn't even really draw that well. And I never took an art class, but I always loved making things, making pictures that no one ever saw. Then I'd show pieces to a neighbor, and then to a coworker, and I still had nice frames from New York, so I started framing them. I really didn't know any better, but I actually got better. Once again, the years passed without my truly noticing them. When I got back to the D, one of my wonderful nieces, and I have thousands of them. No kids, no dog, no houseplants, but I have 1,000 nieces. And my niece said to me, sitting in the room, staring right at me, without blinking, she said, Uncle Roni, you are a very odd duck. If I was a kid, I would have burst into tears. But I'm a grown-up, and so I had to admit, yeah, I am. Which is why I tell young people, be your own self as long as you possibly can. Which is why I also tell them, be brilliant and never freaking apologize for it. And I blame, since I still have a little time left, I blame Thelonious Monk. I blame Sun Ra. I blame the Wizard of Oz. I blame the Beatles. Eventually, I came to a place where pasting a giraffe's head on JFK was no longer enough. I started sampling myself, taking photos, putting change upon change in a world that I invented rather than the one that I borrowed, to get back to that back of the head, bottom of the heart, abstract soul brother thing. I'm hoping to nudge Romare Bearden into the 21st century. I'm wondering what's going to happen next. That's a true question. I have no idea. And a truly honest person will tell you that they are just guessing, just like everybody else. And all I know is, nowadays, I'm having some very serious fun and that I hope you enjoy. Thank you for letting me share this with you. And in closing, I'd like to offer a few inspirational words from one of the original abstract soul brothers, the great George Clinton of Parliament Funkadelic fame. He once said in a song, when I do it, I'll be sticking to it like hot grits on Al Green. Thank you very much.